All right, let's dive in. Today, we're going to try and tackle some of those huge financial questions that, just seem impossible to answer. We're pulling back the curtain on the invisible forces that shape your money, your debt, and really, your future.
And we are starting with a real head-scratcher. It sounds like a riddle, right? If pretty much every major country is trillions of dollars in debt, who is the lender? Where's all this money even coming from? It seems like it shouldn't work, but the answer tells you so much about how the global economy really operates.
But hang on, before we can even get to that, we have to ask an even more basic question. What even is money? Like, why is a dollar bill worth anything at all? It's not just a piece of paper or some numbers on your banking app. Its value is built on something way more powerful than that.
So, it really boils down to two big things. First, the strength of the economy that backs it. Is the country making stuff? Is it growing? And second, and this one is absolutely crucial, is trust. Do other people and other countries actually believe that money is going to hold its value tomorrow? A strong economy plus global trust. That's what gives that piece of paper its power.
Okay, so this leads to the question that I think we've all had at some point. If a country is in a tough spot, it needs money for schools or roads or whatever, why not just fire up the printing presses and make more cash? I mean, it seems like the world's easiest solution, but there is a very, very dangerous catch.
To really get why, let's use a super simple analogy. Just picture a tiny little town. It's totally self-contained. You've got 100 people, a total of $1,000 in the entire town, and only 100 loaves of bread for sale. That's it. Everything's in a nice, neat balance.
And here's what that balance looks like. With $1,000 floating around and 100 loaves of bread available, the math is easy, right? One loaf of bread costs $10. The amount of money perfectly reflects the value of the stuff you can actually buy.
But now, the government steps in. It decides to double the money supply. Just like that. It prints another $1,000 and hands it out. Now everyone feels richer. They've got way more cash in their pockets. But, and this is the big but, has anything of real value actually been created?
And here's the punchline. There are still only 100 loaves of bread. Nothing new was made. But now you've got twice as much money chasing the exact same amount of stuff. The town baker isn't an idiot. They see everyone rushing in with all this new cash. So what do? They double the price. The loaf that was $10 is now $20. The new money didn't make anyone wealthier, it just made everything more expensive. That right there is inflation.
So this is the whole point. Money is just a claim on real things, on goods and services. If you print more claims without creating more real things, you just water down the value of every other claim out there. You simply cannot print wealth. You can only print inflation.
Okay, so now we get it. Governments can't just print their way out of trouble. So, if they need money, they have to borrow it. Which brings us back to our first big mystery. How does this whole global system of IOUs actually work?
Well, the main tool they use is something called a government bond. And honestly, it's just a fancy IOU. When you buy a bond, you're literally lending the government your money. And in return, they give you a piece of paper that promises to pay you back the full amount, plus a little extra interest on a specific date in the future. It's seen as one of the safest investments on the planet.
So who is buying all these IOUs? Well, it's a huge mix of folks. A massive chunk is actually owned by a country's own citizens and institutions, like the pension fund that manages your retirement. And yep, other countries buy them too, as a super safe place to park their cash. So when you hear that the US owes money to China, it's true, but that's just one piece of this gigantic interconnected puzzle.
And all of this creates a constant cycle. The government needs cash, so it sells new bonds. It uses that money to pay for things, sure, but it also uses a chunk of it to pay back the people whose bonds from 10 or 20 years ago are now due. As long as people keep trusting the government and keep buying new bonds, this can just keep going, kind of forever. The wild part is, the total debt almost never gets paid off. It just gets rolled over again and again.
So we've got these massive abstract systems of money and debt running the world. But how does any of that actually connect to your life? Well, it connects directly to that feeling we all have, that everything, especially a place to live, has become crazy expensive. Let's break down why that is.
This slide, wow. Just look at these numbers. Back in 1970, an average home costs around 23 grand. Now, if you adjust for all that inflation we were just talking about, that same house should cost about $170,000 today. But it doesn't. Not even close. The actual average price today is over $400,000. Something went way, way off track.
And this chart just says it all, doesn't it? This is the heart of the problem. Yeah, our wages have gone up over the last 50 years, but that growth has been absolutely dwarfed by the explosion in what it costs to buy a home. That huge gap between the little bar and the giant one, that's the chasm that millions of people are trying to jump across just to afford a roof over their heads.
So what on earth happened? It's complicated, for sure, but two huge factors really stand out. First, we just haven't built enough houses to keep up with the number of people who need them. Simple supply and demand. And second, housing has fundamentally changed from being mainly about shelter to being a financial asset, something investors and big corporations buy up to make a profit, which pushes prices higher and higher for regular families.
This all brings us to one final, and maybe the most crucial idea. We've seen how debt works for governments, and we all know how it feels for most people, like a heavy weight, a burden. But there's a completely different side to this story. For a small group of people, debt isn't a problem at all. It's a tool, a powerful one.
And this slide just lays out the two different worlds. For most of us, debt means high-interest credit cards and student loans. It actively drains our wealth every month. But for the very wealthy, debt is totally different. It's low-interest loans taken out against assets they already own. It doesn't drain their wealth. It gives them leverage to create even more.
Okay, let me walk you through exactly how this works. Let's pretend you have a stock portfolio, and it's worth a cool $10 million. You've done great. And now you want, say, $1 million in cash to live on for a few years, or maybe start a new business. What do you do?
Now, the obvious answer would be to just sell $1 million worth of stock. The problem? If you do that, you're going to get hit with a massive capital gains tax bill on your profits. You could lose hundreds of thousands of dollars right off the top. But there's another way, a strategy the wealthy use to get cash and legally pay zero taxes on it.
Here's the move. Instead of selling, you go to a bank and you borrow money using your $10 million portfolio as collateral. The bank is happy to give you $1 million loan at a super low interest rate, because for them, it's a completely safe bet. And here's the magic trick. Because a loan isn't income, and because you didn't actually sell any stock, there is no taxable event. You get $1 million cash, and you pay zero capital gains tax. All while your original $10 million in stocks is still sitting there, hopefully growing faster than the interest on your loan.
And that's the key takeaway. It's a financial strategy that is completely legal, but it's really only available to people who already have a lot of assets to borrow against in the first place. It creates this powerful feedback loop where wealth can be used to generate tax-free cash, which can then be used to buy even more wealth-generating assets.
So that brings us to the final thought here. From what money even is, to inflation, to how national debt works, to the two different games of personal debt, these financial systems are all around us all the time. Understanding them is the first step, and it really leaves us with one big question.